Hey, everybody, in today's episode, it's myself, Benjamin B., and Dr. T. Listen, today we're talking about situations that happen when we get sober. Life is going to happen, and I, in fact, had experienced something just this past week that we thought would make sense to discuss on the podcast. Bad things are going to happen, but what determines if you're going to pick up is how prepared you are. Are you spiritually fit? Have you done the work to be able to get through these situations and stay sober? And I didn't drink, nor did I even think about drinking. And I have to move forward and be there for my family. So I'm going to shed some light into what this situation was that I recently went through and how I got through it. And, ultimately the silver lining of it all. So we cover all that and more. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I'm your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we've got Dr. T.
Hi, everybody.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com, and ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, peeps?
That's right.
Yes, sir.
How's it going?
Chilling like a villain.
We're back. Big Book Study's going good. We just released week 5. That was a recording because, well, I wasn't going to be in town. Turns out I was in town, but for different reasons that we'll go into. But before we get into that, Big Book Study, I think's been going phenomenal. What do you guys think?
I've gotten a lot of feedback.
Have you?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
You get messages on Facebook and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, just saying, really giving Eric accolades on how well he breaks it down and just makes it very easy to understand, very palatable.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been both from recovered alcoholics and addicts and also loved ones.
Right. I had a lady email me, I want to say yesterday or the day before, saying, and this is interesting, she said that she really loves it, but she noticed on the recordings that I see in the beginning, I didn't have the Q&A portion.
Yes.
But then I added the Q&A portion, and this family member emailed me and she said, hey, I just want clarity around what you're going to do with the Q&A portion, because I don't necessarily want my stuff out in the for everybody. So I just responded to her and said, look, obviously we want you to participate. In the event you do chime in, on the Zoom call, I can always just edit that out. And she said, okay.
Yeah, I think that's something we should talk about, because I also had someone mention something to me about that, like the anonymity. It's a hard word for me to say, but that was one of the things they were skeptical about with the Q&A. Should we post it? Should we not? Because it's supposed to be a safe place, and some people are afraid, want to partake or want to ask a question or want to share, but they may not necessarily want it out there for the world to see.
So what do we do?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously, to tell the listeners, we've had a lot of discussion about this. Eric, myself, you all, like the traditions. Technically, it's not a meeting. It's not sanctioned by AA, but at the same time, like, I'm always somebody, I know Eric is too, that wants to respect traditions as well, regardless. But it's one of those things where I think the best thing to do is just kind of wait for feedback and see.
Maybe we can post like a poll in the Sobriety Network for people.
Yeah.
And just get feedback from everyone, because we want to encourage people to grow a community and be part of the community, but we want to respect them at the same time. And maybe it is something where if we opt not to do the Q&A, we can have them reach out to us, privately, via our info,
right,
that way. So they know they still have support and input, but that's something we will have to talk about behind the scenes.
Yeah. Which that reminds me, I had a lady that I have to get back to. Beverly is her name. Beverly, if you're listening, which I know you are, I will be getting back to you. No, I think that's a good idea, and we can even send an email to everybody and just
That's kind of in relation to, I texted Tom earlier a screenshot of a couple topics we could do for episodes. It's kind of related to the one that I sent you. I'm assuming you probably didn't look at them.
no.
But like the way that people interpret like the steps, AA, the big book, whatever, it references, I know a guy he's a historian for Alcoholics Anonymous, and even he talks about how much opinion and all that, and it's just he makes a big statement how it's actually technically all open for interpretation. Mm-hmm. Some people are probably freaking out hearing me say this, but if we do cover it one day, I think we should. It gives some clarity on like where the guy's coming from, because he's one of those dudes that's like, if it's not documented and you can't prove it, it's not a fact, and he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people on AA that I've ever in my life come across, yet he still holds the personal opinion that it's open to interpretation, and there's no one more educated on it than this guy Jim W.
Jim W?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we could definitely do an episode on that for sure, because I think there's you kind of have a mixed bag when it comes to that. But my quick opinion of it is we're in a day and age where technology is here and it's not going anywhere. And what does it hurt if we know that Alcoholics Anonymous has worked over the course of almost 100 years for millions of people? Why wouldn't it be something that we would want to shout from the rooftops?
Well, oh, go ahead.
You go, and then
All right.
I'll have my little
2 points I wanted to make just to kind of hit on it, where if you look at the forward to the 4th edition and the beginning of the latest edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 4th edition sitting over there, Tom, if you look at the forward to the 4th edition, it talks about modem to modem, like the internet was just getting started when the big book, this edition of the big book came out. They're working on a new edition. It's supposed to be out pretty soon, if I'm not mistaken. But it literally mentions modem to modem. They knew it was going this direction, and AA has to change with the times.
But my 2 cents is just thinking from like an outsider's perspective is, if I'm a family member or a loved one and my family's still not aware, we see people like that all the time struggling with that and being ashamed to say that their family member or loved one has a problem, or maybe they haven't identified it as a problem as a family, but they know it's a problem, going back to harboring all of those, secrets and negative emotions. And so maybe they're not quite ready yet to yell at the top of a roof, hey, my husband has a problem. How do I deal with this? He might see this or check my email and get mad at me and cause another problem. You know what I mean? So,
oh yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that's, I think that's on an individualized level. It is something that you have to be comfortable with. Where I was coming from is there's a camp of people out there that hinge on, like, we've had people come on the podcast that say, I'll do the podcast, but I don't want to say Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah. I'll say, a 12-step program. And that's fine. I respect that. But my take is that, if you have a platform and you're comfortable talking about that, then you should, because what we believe is AA is one of the most proven ways in getting sober. That doesn't mean that there's not plenty of other ways to get sober. In fact, there's multiple ways. And, that's why we like to take kind of a multifaceted type approach. I don't think, look, I'm a firm believer, you can't just waltz into a meeting and work steps and then, stay sober for the rest of your life. Or maybe you could, and there's people out there that can, but it's less about, and I've said this how many times, it's less about putting down the drink and the drug as it's more about, like, what does your life look like? Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And that, to hit it home even more, because opinions run to extremes with, like, the traditions talk about not being in news, press, film, radio, etc. But then if the contradiction is, like, you could look at the history of AA specifically, there's all kinds of contradiction within that, where AA it took off because of the Saturday Evening Post, which was a newspaper
Right.
back in the 1940s when it really started to launch. Had that newspaper article not come out of AA, it may not have gotten the attraction that it got. Like, that was huge for Alcoholics Anonymous, yet our traditions are to stay out of the newspapers. So it's like,
well, and you look at Joe and Charlie, you know, that eventually became a publication
yeah,
in print, in audio version. Now it's on YouTube. And you look at what we're doing, like how many people have been introduced to AA or have gone back to AA because of our podcast?
yeah, that's true. I get a lot of that,
you know,
communication.
And that's the hope in terms of the Big Book study, kind of tie it back into that, is it's just to give people a better understanding of the book in and of itself for both people in recovery that want to be in recovery and family members and loved ones.
You know what's funny too? Has this been the case with you? I think you've mentioned this before, where like my buddy Frank, real good friend of mine, he's an NA guy, but him and we were talking over dinner one night, talking about how, like, in your first 5 years of sobriety, you tend to be like a Nazi about whatever program it is you're working, like sticking to traditions and this, that, like, to a T. But the longer that I'm sober, like, there's a part of me, the more like open-minded and leaning, you show up, you're good. You know what I mean? I mean, I do have my strong opinions about it too, but I just feel like when you're in early recovery, you're like,
you have to be, though.
This is how it is.
You have to be. I feel like that's what is instilled in people, because they don't have anything, and then they finally get some type of structure, and it's like, I can't deviate from this plan because I don't know what to do if I deviate at this point.
Yeah.
And if you live your life by that plan and that structure, and you get year after year after year, it's great, you know. But then I think it's like any lifestyle change. You know, you have someone going from eating fast food every day and they're 300 pounds, you know, overweight, and they change their lifestyle and they're so structured and routine, they're scared to deviate from it because what if? What if you deviate? What if you change? How do you deal with that? They don't know. They don't know. They don't want to go back to that, but they also don't know outside of that structure, outside of their box, what else is out there? What's going to happen? What if I change again?
Yeah. It's a good segue into today's topic, fast food and changing lifestyle. So, last Tuesday, so I was supposed to go to Nashville for my daughter's competition, gymnastics competition. And we were supposed to leave. This episode's actually coming out tomorrow. So this past Thursday, we were supposed to go to Nashville. She was supposed to compete, yada, yada, yada. Well, Tuesday of last week, my wife took her to the pediatrician because she's been showing these signs and symptoms of diabetes, urinating a lot, losing weight, eating a lot, drinking a ton of water, and always chalked it up to gymnastics because she's training 3 days a week, 3 hours a day. She, she just turned 7 literally on Friday.
Mind you, Tom called me one day before she had her appointment, and he was telling me all of these things. And Tom and I were on the phone, and Hattie was in the car. I don't know if I'm supposed to say her name or not.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
His daughter was in the car, and we were like asking her all these questions. And, you know, I told Tom, like, maybe it's just like we said, it just chalked it up to all of these other things. But, you know, Tom's wife is a very good mom and very astute. And she did say, like, hey, I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And Tom and I kind of brushed under the rug. But at the same time, we said, she should probably make a doctor's appointment just in case.
Yeah. And Tambini did tell me, I hope you don't get mad at me for saying this. Tambini's like, it could be nothing. I mean, I wet the bed until I was 10 years old.
I did. I'm guilty.
So
Your Ultimate Warrior underwear?
And my Ninja Turtle sheets, yes.
Yeah.
That was me.
So anyways, long story short, we Amanda took her to the pediatrician, and long story short, she ended up having type 1 diabetes. And I was sitting here, and like all day I knew this appointment was coming at 2:15. And I'm thinking that it's just going to be, you know, they're going to have her pee in a cup to see if there's, you know, glucose in her urine or whatever they do. And that was going to be the end of it. So like 2:30, I text Amanda, anything yet? ? And she literally texts me back, she has it. And I'm like, and pardon my French, I'm like, shut the fuck up. Call me. And so I call her. She's like, she just tested positive for sugar in her urine. We don't know yet. Come to the doctor. And so I grab my keys, grab my stuff, and boom, bolt over to the doctor and call Tambini. And at this point, like, things are setting in for me, and I start like sobbing, you know? And
spiraling.
Yeah, like just kind of everything is going on in my head, you know? All kind of scenarios. Angry, mad, frustrated, sad, all this stuff. And you know, Tambini said, well, did they prick her finger yet to test her blood? I'm like, I don't know. What's the numbers? What's it got to be? And Tambini, I think you said anything
over 226.
Yeah.
Like not fasting.
Right, is going to be. And so I call Amanda back as I'm like on the way to the doctor. And she was like, they just pricked her finger and her sugar was 486. I'm like, fuck. And that was the start of it. So at that point, I get to the doctor. Hattie's hysterical, crying. Winnie is just like oblivious. She's like climbing on all this stuff, you know? And I just walked in and broke down, you know? And Levi then like saw me and he broke down, and Amanda's like trying to hold it together, you know? And she's so good at this. Like she's like she balances us out.
She's the rock.
She's the
Yeah.
glue.
You know the irony behind that? Probably 20 minutes ago downstairs, Tom was telling me she's the emotional one.
She is. She's emotional with certain things, but when it comes to
your kids,
yeah, when it comes to stuff like that, she's like she's good, right? And you know, I was at the doctor's office probably 10 minutes, and they sent us over to St. Mary's Medical, and we were there for 3 days learning all about diabetes. And man, it was like tough, you know what I'm saying? Like just all the and why I think we thought it was important to bring this up is like this stuff happens in sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't the first time, you know. My dad had the stroke 3 years ago, and I found him, you know, after he had the stroke, and we have to be able to deal with this stuff.
And here, I want to point this out too. This is an important part where within sobriety, you're also now part of the solution and not a hindrance to the problem. If you were a drunk right now,
yeah,
you would have been worthless. I mean, we had a case here. I won't tell the time frame when it was or anything like that, but that one of our clients' sons got in a motorcycle wreck, ended up in the hospital, so he took off from here, and it was a pretty bad wreck, like a really bad one, and took off from here in his car to go up north to a state up north, drank on the way and never made it to the hospital.
Yep.
Like, your kid is literally at death's door, and you're drunk on the road after being sober for X amount of days. Because we see that a lot, too, with, like you're just saying, tragic things will happen, you know, life will life, and a lot of folks pick up a drink over that. They feel like a justification, or somebody passes away. It's a justification to take a drink. Like, that's when we need to be doing the exact opposite. That's one of the things that drives me crazy. Like, someone passes away and then someone relapses over it, and they say that's the reason they did. I look at it like, man, that's a reason to honor that person and not pick up. Like it makes no sense to me. But point is,
Yeah.
you're a pillar
Mm-hmm.
in their life today and part of the solution because of your sobriety, dude.
Yeah. And I think that all of those emotions, because I was on the phone with you, so it's hard to be on the other like receiving end of that, because I'm trying to be a friend and, give reassurance and stay positive. But I also know at the same time, putting myself in your position, like those emotions are normal.
Yeah.
To be angry, to, yell, scream, cry, have all the emotions. I don't think people understand that as well. It's okay to have those emotions and feel those emotions, but it's how you cope with those emotions and channel them. And that's what changes the trajectory on the outcome of the situation and how you handle it and cope with it. Because we see this all the time. People who have 1 month, 1 year, 10 years in sobriety, it doesn't matter. It happens all the time. Like you said, they'll go out, they'll drink, they'll use that as an excuse. And it's not an excuse by any means. It's how strong were you really in your recovery and your ability to handle your emotions on that introspection, like looking back, obviously not strong enough because you relapsed over it. So what can we change at that moment in time to prevent that?
Looking at the situation, I didn't think about drinking one time, which isn't, I'm not looking for any accolades on that because, I'm almost 15 years sober. So I would have been surprised if I had thoughts on drinking. I'll have thoughts of drinking in the most random times. Like I drive past a bar that looks appealing and it's like, oh, that would be nice to go in there and throw a few back. But that's the extent of it, But in that in that situation, I look at that, and this is where, like, I think as somebody in long-term recovery and seeing people almost utilizing these situations as like a reason or a justification, it pisses me off. It's like, you're a coward. You know what I'm saying? Like, because exactly what you said, full damn well that you're needed in this very moment, and just to reference the person that you were talking about, who I know who you're talking about, that was a very cowardly thing to do. And I need to soften my heart in the sense of, like, I understand he's an alcoholic and he didn't have much sobriety time, but it's tough to see those situations because it's just frustrating. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like it's so selfish and self-centered. Like I couldn't even imagine like going and stopping off somewhere and getting a bottle of liquor before going to deal with this situation, And I know it's the alcoholism. I mean, didn't Bill W. like have, what was the story with him, or with the birth of his child? Or am I making this up?
Yeah.
No, there was it's in the movie. I Am Bill W.
Oh, I haven't seen that movie in forever, dude.
Yeah.
No, I forget that
Or
part.
maybe it was a movie, but somebody didn't miss the birth of their child, but they weren't very present for the birth of their child because they had to go get drunk.
Oh, that was me.
Well, I know that was you. It's just, it's frustrating, but I know you were going to say something.
Well, I also want to clarify too that, like, for the listeners, like, if you have a loved one that's an alcoholic or a drug addict, we're talking about people that have put down the drink and drug and they've been sober for a minute, like, where versus someone in active alcoholism or active drug addiction. I don't expect them to be there for anything. So please don't put those same expectations. Like, if I'm already shooting heroin or drinking, like, and something tragic happens, I'm not showing up. Like, but once I got some sobriety time under my belt, and it's kind of funny, sitting here thinking about it, the longer that I'm sober, the more I just have this drive and sense of responsibility to be part of the solution in these problems. Like when something tragic happens, like I feel like it's my responsibility to be the rock in the situation. And I think that happens for just about everybody in sobriety. Most people.
Well, it's like having purpose again, you know, and that's, you know, so we don't have much time left, but I do want to talk about like what happened as a result of this, you know, because I'm a firm believer that you go through these situations and in fact, you know, you can't see it in the front end, but hindsight being 2020, there's been a lot of good that has come out of this. Now I'm only a week into it, so, you know, got to give it some time. I never knew one person with type 1 diabetes prior last Tuesday. Now I know a ton of people. Ben, you hooked me up with your cousin who's been an absolute lifesaver for that. Tambini, you hooked me up with Lauren, who is now Hattie's doctor for endocrinology. And like all these things have kind of lined up, you know, and from the family perspective, it's like, I don't want to say it's drawn us closer because it hasn't really, but like, it's weird.
When there's a challenge within the family, it I think drawing closer.
Amanda, it's forced Amanda and I to come together closer as a team. It has.
Did you notice that with the kids too? Maybe not Winnie so much. She's tiny.
Sorry, your cousin literally just texted me.
Oh, right on.
What was the question?
Did you see that with the kids though too?
The kids coming together.
I wouldn't expect it from Winnie because Winnie's little. But Levi, he's what, 9?
Yeah. Well, he'll be 9 next week. Not really, because like they're very, you know, they want mom or they want me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, Hattie's getting you attention right now, but Levi's old enough, and I had to have a couple conversations with him, like, hey, this is kind of a transition that we're going through right now. This is part of, you know, being a family. Like, it's me and you. We're the only men in the house. Like, we're outnumbered big time. 2 female dogs, you know, 2 sisters, your mom. Like, we gotta ante up, you know, and we got to do this. And so he's been good. But you know, he's still, you know, his emotions get in the way a little bit, but it has done. It really puts things into perspective in terms of like what we're really called to do as sober people, you know, to be productive, to be there when people need us and stuff like that, you know. And I'll tell you this, being in the hospital, first off, the hospital experience was awful, as expected.
Always is the worst.
But going through there and seeing like the kids with cancer and stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, we got. I'm reluctant to say lucky, but it like really put things into perspective.
Yeah.
You know, there was this little girl that was probably Hattie's age that had, 2 of them had lymphoma, and just going through chemo. She has to go there every 2 weeks to get
chemo.
Yeah. And her and Hattie sat there and like were painting art, and this little girl's happy as hell. And, you know, so it was all in all, it was you know, circumstances being less than ideal. It was a good experience, you know, and knowing that there's nothing we can do about it. You just got to move forward.
Well, that ties back to community too. Look at the people, because you're sober, that you hang out with today. You hang out with a doctor.
Right.
How cool. Who actually knows like people that matter in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine like you and I are out on the streets or hanging out with crackhead Ben. I'm like, Ben, who do you know? Like,
but you're like, let me call my cousin.
Yeah. No, well, that worked out too, because you called me that night and you're like, dude, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. My cousin's like, this is all she does. And I called her that night.
My cousin, did he tell you? Yeah. So my cousin, she was diagnosed with diabetes. What'd she tell you, 9?
I think so.
She was severely hospitalized as a result. That's how she found out, but she was young. And I just remember growing up, always being around her. We had to pick restaurants. Like it's been a thing for her that even I've noticed, to today. She's 4 years older or 2 years older than me, 2 years older than me. But as a result of having diabetes, now that's like all when I called her actually about Tom, she lives up in PA, but she was actually in Massachusetts putting on a ski event at a ski resort for kids
That's
with
cool.
diabetes. Like she's literally all she does is like,
Yeah. She's a pretty
like
big deal.
diabetic coaching or something.
I don't know what it is. In fact, she didn't even tell me. And I offered like, hey, I don't know, if I got to pay you or whatever. And she's like she shut that down real quick,
Yeah, she's awesome.
She sent me all types of literature. She has checked in with me every day. Like, it's been, and Lauren was great. She said, look, you guys can call me whenever you want. So all in all, it lined up, and here's probably the best part.
Let's hear it.
I've lost probably about 10 pounds throughout this whole process.
Because of stress?
No,
Not
because we
eating?
haven't eaten out. Like we haven't eaten out. We've been cooking at home. I've been weighing out food and doing all the stuff. Last night,
I said that. On
You
day
did
one.
say that.
yeah, last night we did order pizza and
Okay.
we had, pizza, but I tell you what, it is a true lifestyle change for her. Like having to literally do math every time she eats. And I hate math. I do. It's simple math, but
it's good education for the kids too.
Yeah.
Your other kids to
Mhm.
learn about food and how it affects their body
yeah.
and what's good food, what's not so good.
A lot of type 1 diabetics, come to find out, are extremely healthy.
They are those that care. We also see the other side of that in treatment.
Right.
I get type 1 diabetics that'll like let their sugar go low because it gives them that rush and they feel like they're high
Really?
and they play
Really?
with their sugar. Oh yeah.
Oh gosh.
See,
I see the other side of it.
I've been in active addiction with diabetics that like just don't even do their insulin. Period.
No, yeah, they don't. They end
like,
up in the
let it go.
hospital. Yeah, DKA.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They end up in the hospital.
Diabetic ketoacidosis.
There you go.
What is that?
So, oh God. Long story short, what happens when your sugars are too high and your sugar's a diuretic in your body, right? So that's why you pee. But at the same time, you get these acid base disturbances. Like your body has to live at a certain pH, right?
Yeah.
But when your sugars are out of whack, your electrolytes, your sodium, your potassium, and then your bicarb, which regulates your acid base balance, goes out of whack. And it can make you severely acidotic.
Yeah.
And then that will put you in the hospital because if you don't fix that acid base balance, you can go into cardiac arrest and you can die.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Well, they said she was only a day or two out of that. So we caught it just in time. So anyway, so yeah, there was this past would have been Sunday. That was a episode that we just pulled from the catalog and reposted it because we didn't have anything in the can to be released. And so we're playing catch up right now, but I appreciate everybody's patience and support. I did do a Facebook Live. It was I
saw that.
and 2 people actually logged on. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't expect this. Mother Knuckers and somebody else.
And they commented too.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
No, appreciate all the support and yeah, all the outreach and feedback from people. So that's it. Anything else?
No.
Silver lining.
That's right.
It's all perspective.
Yep.
Ozempic and osteoporosis?
Oh God.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just kidding.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.